Hello, my name is Kristina Judie, and today I will be discussing different areas of socio-emotional development and early childhood. This is a brief overview of the topics I will be discussing throughout this presentation. Self-understanding for a child is a representation of themselves, and they also begin to learn differences between themselves and others. These differences are often related to things they can see and not their personalities, and these can include things such as physical activities, material characteristics, and also their different body attributes. An example given in the text is the differences in a person's hair color, height, or even owning something that other child doesn't own, such as a bicycle or a toy. They can also begin to give very optimistic self-descriptions and begin to use emotional terms and psychological traits around the ages of 4 to 5. They are optimistic because they don't have the understanding to be able to tell the difference between the competence that they desire and the actual competence that they currently have. There are, of course, exceptions in relation to insecurely attached children with a lower self-concept due to severe stress in their families. Not only are children at this age able to perceive their own psychological traits, they are also beginning to perceive psychological traits in other people. Perspective taking is when a child is able to understand the thoughts and feelings of other people and not just his own. They are also beginning to show their trust or lack thereof in other people. For example, in a study of 5-year-olds, they were more likely to show trust in an expert than a 3-year-old would be. But this was affected by how the expert behaved, and they often preferred and only trusted the ones that were nicer and didn't really trust the experts that were mean. While reviewing this information, it's extremely important to understand that there are individual differences among children and their level of social understanding and social interactions. Social interactions and the relationships a child has can contribute greatly to how well they are able to understand each other and how well they're able to understand themselves. Emotional development at this age allows them to better understand others' emotions and control their own. I will cover expressing, understanding, and also regulating emotions. Children begin to express emotions in infancy, but as they get older and enter into early childhood, they are able to be aware of themselves and their distinction from others, and this allows them to express self-conscious emotions. These are strongly influenced by their parents, and they can include guilt, shame, pride, and embarrassment, but the most common emotions at this age are pride and guilt. They are influenced by their parents because of how they respond to the children and their actions as they're growing up. If a parent is mostly positive, the child will have more pride. If the parent has a high incidence of more negative emotions with the child and their actions, then the child will also have more negative emotions and experience more guilt and shame. Understanding emotions is a very important change that occurs in early childhood, and it increases throughout the age period. Children now begin to understand that things that occur can evoke different emotions in themselves and others. They are more able to understand a person's emotions by their facial expressions, and that different people's emotions can change their behaviors. In addition, they have a better understanding that people's emotions can influence one another, and they are gradually increasing the number of words they can use to describe emotions. Prosocial behavior influences understanding emotions in addition to how they are able to regulate their own emotions. Regulating emotions is very important for development, and it helps a child manage conflicts and demands they will face in their life when they interact with other people. As with most areas of development, the role of the parents can be very important and can be described as either emotion coaching parents or emotion dismissing parents, depending on how they talk to the child. An emotion coaching parent helps teach a child how to deal with their emotions in an effective way, while an emotion dismissing parent tries to ignore, deny, or even change their child's negative emotions. How a child regulates their emotions can vary depending on parenting style, and emotion coaching parents, children have had better outcomes. Peer relations are also important for children, and how well a child can regulate their emotion helps them form better relationships with their peers. And children who are more emotionally positive tend to be more popular and build better connections with their peers. Moral development is defined in our text as the development that involves thoughts, feelings, and behaviors regarding rules and conventions about what people should do in their interactions with other people. Emotions in a child help influence their moral development to include positive feelings such as empathy and negative feelings such as anger, shame, and guilt. Moral emotions or feelings are linked to cognitive development in child and social aspects. Piaget stimulated interest in moral issues for children, and after observing children, he came up with two distinct stages children went through. From the ages of 4 to 7, children show signs of heteronomous morality, and this is the view that rules can't be changed and that people don't control them, more like they come from a higher power. With this view, they believe in imminent justice, meaning that punishment must come immediately when a rule is broken. When a child is older, they begin to transition and have qualities from both stages, and then they progress into the autonomous morality stage at about 10 years of age and older, and they no longer have the same views. They now know that rules are created by people, and that if you aren't caught doing something wrong, punishment isn't inevitable. And even if you are caught sometimes, you won't always be punished. Piaget believed this change in moral reasoning occurred through peer relations and interaction, but recent studies have shown that it can't be put into distinct stages and age periods because they vary across children and situations are often inconsistent. Moral behavior is a primary focus in behavioral and social cognitive theories of child development and believes that moral behavior is developed through imitation, reinforcement, and punishment. If a child is rewarded for a good moral behavior, it's more likely that they will continue to repeat that behavior. And the opposite is true for immoral behaviors. If they are punished for them, it limits the likelihood of their reoccurrence. Another factor in moral behavior is the development of self-control. And if a child can learn to delay their gratification instead of seeking instant gratification, this helps the child to resist temptations. Parents also have a significant influence on the development of moral behavior and can work to avert any potential of misbehavior in the child and to discuss important values with them to help them resist these temptations. Gender identity refers to the sense of a person's own gender and accepting being male or female. This typically develops around the age of 2.5 years old. Gender roles are expectations on how people are supposed to act, think, and feel based on their gender. Traditional masculine or feminine roles being acquired is gender typing, such as assuming that men are more aggressive and that women are supposed to be more sensitive. Biological influences play a significant role in gender development, and these can include chromosomes and hormones. For example, women have XX chromosomes and men have XY chromosomes, and the development of testes is triggered by that Y chromosome. The most important sex hormones are androgens and estrogens. Estrogens are responsible for the development of female characteristics, and androgens promote the male characteristics to develop. And these hormones can also have an effect on the child's socio-emotional development, especially the amount of fetal testosterone, which has been linked to an increase in both boys and girls in reference to male typical play in children around 6 to 10 years old. Social scientists differ in their beliefs in that they don't believe psychological gender differences are caused by biological dispositions, but that they are actually a result of social experiences that an individual has. According to the social role theory, gender differences are a result from the contrasting roles that men and women have in the culture that they grow up in. The psychoanalytic theory of gender is based off of Freud's view on the development of sexual attraction to the opposite sex parent, which is referred to as the Oedipus complex or the Electra complex. The child renounces these feelings because of feelings of anxiety, and this results in them identifying with the same-sex parent. The social cognitive theory of gender says that a child's gender development is a result of what he observes and imitates, and then how they are rewarded or punished for their gender-appropriate or inappropriate behavior. In this theory, parental influence plays a large role in how they reward or punish based on the type of behavior they see as gender appropriate. And then, soon after, their peers begin to join in on this influence by modeling either masculine or feminine behavior and what they see as appropriate. The gender schema theory is an influential cognitive theory related to influence on gender and how it is defined. It is defined that gender typing emerges as children gradually develop gender schemas of what is considered gender appropriate or gender inappropriate in a culture. Schema is related to the child's cognitive structure, and the gender schema is how the world is organized into either male or female, which we know isn't that simple in today's society. In a child's culture, they will experience different things throughout their development that will shape what they view as gender appropriate or gender inappropriate, and then they are motivated to act in ways that conform to these schemas. As we have discussed throughout these slides, parenting can play a large role in how a child develops in many ways, and this also includes their socio-emotional development. Diana Baumrin believes that parents shouldn't just be one way all the time, but that they should develop rules for their children and be affectionate with them too. With her experience, she describes 4 different types of parenting styles, and they include authoritarian, authoritative, neglectful, and also indulgent. Authoritarian parenting is described as being very restrictive and punishing children in order to get them to respect them and follow their rules. Sometimes the forms of punishment can be spanking also. This parenting style sets out to control their children without taking into consideration what they say or feel, and this often results in unhappy children who are also fearful and anxious. Authoritative parenting is different in the fact that while it does place limits on the children and controls their actions, it also encourages children to be independent, and it takes into consideration the child's feelings when making decisions. This parenting style results in cheerful children who are self-reliant and have self-control and are also achievement-oriented. This is often the most recommended parenting style. Neglectful parenting is where a child is neglected by their parents, and the parents are often very uninvolved in the child's life. And this results in a child who can't really handle independence, and they don't have very much self-control, in addition to being socially incompetent. Indulgent parents, on the other hand, are pretty opposite. They are highly involved in the child's life, but rarely place any demands on them, and basically let the children do whatever they want. This results in children that can be non-compliant, egocentric, domineering, and also have difficulty in relations with their peers. The authoritarian parenting style, as I said before, is big on punishing the child and can often use corporal punishment, which is physical punishment. While the physical punishment is legal in the United States, there are multiple reasons why it should be avoided. First, the child can begin to imitate the violent behavior. It can instill fear and rage, and it isn't very productive because it doesn't tell the child how he or she could have handled the situation, but just shows what they shouldn't do. It has also been studied that children can be more aggressive as a result of violent behaviors. Parents can oftentimes become abusive when spanking their child because they get so angry they take it out on the child. There are different views on whether or not this damages the child developmentally, but psychologists usually recommend something along the lines of timeout and reasoning with the child to help them learn the differences between right or wrong. Also, removing them from the situation can be beneficial. Being raised in a different culture can influence how a child is raised and how the parent chooses to raise them. This is something to take into consideration when working with different children. This can change the common parenting method used and the family dynamics as a whole. Different cultures can also have different resources available to children to include how close they are to their extended families. Oftentimes, they have to move away from grandparents and they don't have those additional relationships. Ethnicity can also have an effect on how a child is raised and can vary on the typical size of the family, the education and income levels, and their structure and composition. Immigration is also a large change in the last decades in the United States, and they usually have experiences with more stressors, especially to preserve their identity and to acculturate. Another thing to consider in child development is the socioeconomic status of the family, because this can affect them in many ways. Families with low income often have less resources, and poverty has also been linked to lower cognitive functioning in children. And this is another example of how families can impact the development of children, but they aren't the only influences. Peer relations also have an effect on a child's socio-emotional development. Peer groups allow the child to receive information of the world outside of their families and also allow them to have a comparison of their abilities compared to other children their age. This doesn't often happen in households because siblings aren't typically the same age. Peer relations play a significant role in typical socio-emotional development and can be a good way to focus on withdrawn or aggressive children and to be able to help them. Developmental changes include how much more children begin to spend time with their peers and how involved these interactions become. They are now able to distinguish people they consider friends or people that they consider not to be their friends, and are more likely than older children to have friends of different genders and ethnicities. Parents can directly or indirectly influence peer play with their children in ways such as providing opportunities for them to play and also their choices of neighborhoods, churches, schools, and the friends that they surround them with. They can encourage peer play by getting them surrounded by more kids their age, or discourage it by keeping them secluded. Play is very important for children. A large amount of peer interactions for young children is through playing together. This is an essential part of a young child's development and even their health. It is believed to help children cope with anxiety and aid in conflict resolution, in addition to allowing them to work off excess energy. Play therapy is also used to help therapists analyze the child's conflict or to help them cope with issues. It is important for cognitive development in addition to language and communication skills. There are different types of play, including sensorimotor play and practice play for infants and younger children, and also pretense symbolic play occurs between 9 and 30 months old. This is when children begin to transform aspects of their physical environment into different symbols, also known as pretend play. This is known by some psychologists as being an important aspect of a child's cognitive development. Social play increases during preschool years and involves playing with their peers, and constructive play is a combination of sensorimotor and practice play with symbolic play, and it is self-regulated. Games are also a form of play, and they're a pleasurable activity that have rules, and they often begin around preschool age. They can be very competitive, and they develop more as children get older. Free playtime has been said to have decreased dramatically, which is a cause for concern because many of the benefits of play for children and for their development. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope that it was both educational and enjoyable. And if you need any more information, please use the children book by McGraw-Hill Education. That's where all the information was obtained from. Thank you so much and have a great day.